The leader of the Bible study, she asked me, do I want to pray? I'm like, sure. As I was praying, my throat started to close up. Something is like actually attacking my throat where I can't pray.
It's like constricting me.
They said, yeah, some people call us a cult because of how devoted we are to each other and to God.
Hey guys, it's Leanne.
It's Lena. Welcome back to our channel. For this week's video, we wanted to talk about our story about how we almost got sucked into another cult when we returned to college.
So let's get into it. For those of you who have been following our channel for a little while, you kind of are aware that back in 2020, we were sucked into a cult. And it primarily stemmed from the social justice movement. Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy story. And if you want to hear more about that, we'll link that video down below. But anyway, so after that experience back in 2020, during that time we had taken two gap years from school, just really trying to figure out our life and find our way back to reality. And so it wasn't until the fall of 2022 when we finally decided to return to college to finish out our education. And let's just say when we returned to college, we were met with yet another interesting experience. So having gone through what we went through, we really wanted to be intentional about like walking with wisdom in this season of our life and actually do things that were rooted in the Word of God because of how badly we were led astray back in 2020. We knew that we just really needed to be rooted in sound doctrine. And so during that year, in 2022, we were really taking a journey through the Bible, and we both were on a year-long Bible study plan. For me, how I came across this specific campus ministry group, they actually found me. So during my lunchtime, since we were both like going through a Bible study plan together, each day we would go through specific chapters that we would study in the Bible. And so during my break times on campus, I would take advantage at that time to read through whatever chapter I needed to read through that specific day. And I remember it was one day during lunchtime where a woman I had never seen before came up to me and was like, "Hey, are you reading the Bible?" I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "Oh, that's so cool." And she was just really intrigued by me. And so she just was like, I'm actually part of a campus ministry. Are you interested in joining us? We typically have our studies on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I was just like, I guess. And to me, that kind of felt like an answered prayer because in that season of my life, I was just really tired of the nonsense. And I wanted to be really surrounded by people who were also believers and were rooted in the Word of God. So I was like, oh, cool. Maybe this is God answering my prayers.
And just a little bit more context. After we left and escaped the cult that we ended up in during 2020, when we came back to school to try to get our life back together, we were really trying to be more active on campus. So we went to college our freshman and sophomore year, and then we took a couple gap years before returning to school. And so we were trying to just live a normal life again. And it was during the fall that there was a lot of like different fairs where different organizations would be tabling outside for students to get involved on campus. And for our first 2 years of college, we weren't really like active on campus. We just kind of went to class and then went home. But this time we wanted to be a lot more intentional with building community. So that's how we ran into these different campus ministries.
Yeah. For her, you want to explain how you ran it?
So for me, it was just during the fall, like I said, and I was just checking out different tables to see what organizations and groups they had on campus to get involved with. And I was just walking around different tables, and that's pretty much how I found this specific campus ministry called International Christian Church. But on campus, they call themselves Life Campus.
So, as we were just checking them out, initially, as always, things appear normal in the beginning. And so we would have these weekly studies with them where on Tuesdays we would have individual like one-on-one sessions with one of the leaders or one of the members in the group. And then on Thursdays they would have a bigger group session. I was like really getting into it. In the beginning I was like, oh, this is such a this is such a blessing. Like, I get to be surrounded by other believers on campus, which I never really expected like that. And so I was like, oh, this is awesome. But I do have to say, after a little while, I started feeling a little off. Like, there wasn't really any reason for why. Like, nothing I could really point out, but just in my spirit, I just was really feeling a little off. I just couldn't put my finger on it, but it just felt very fake. Because the thing about this campus ministry, they were like very, very zealous and kind of over the top. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, yeah, to me, I guess I was just like, I wasn't used to people being like super on fire for Jesus and things like that. So I was just like, I just need to get used to this.
So at the same time, as we were trying to find community on campus and be more involved, that was also during the time where we were at our old church, which we talked about in one of our last videos about leaving demonic churches. So at that same time, we were very spiritually drained and we were not being filled, and we couldn't really find our community at our church home because we just felt taken advantage of and like super neglected at our church home. So when we came across this campus ministry, we're like, oh, maybe this is another opportunity for us to, get filled up again.
So we just continued on with the Bible studies. And I remember one afternoon, I just came home to Lena. I was like, I'm not trying to be like a negative Nancy or anything, but I can't help but feel like it's just like the group, the way they did this Bible studies, it just felt very, very scripted. I was like, it's just something not normal. It's just something not natural about this group. And I just can't put my finger on it. And I'm like, I'm not trying to label everything a cult just because we had just gotten out of the cult, but it feels a little cultish. So I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. And usually she's the first one to feel off about something, and then it takes me a little bit longer to feel what she's feeling. But usually when she gets that feeling, she's right about it. So she was pretty much second guessing herself. But we just continue forward, trying to build relationships with the people in this ICC group. And things were fine for a little while. But we did notice the students had to be super dedicated to always meeting with this group, which I understand. If you're part of a community, you're supposed to be engaged and involved in everything. But it was to the point where they couldn't even really study or focus on their schoolwork while they were on campus, because the way that the leaders made them feel was that their only purpose was to focus on ministry and recruiting people. And I'm like, so basically, if you're not doing ministry, you're not living in your purpose.
Yeah. And they just put a huge emphasis on making disciples. We would see the other students that were heavily involved in this group traveling almost every other week to do these church plants. And I'm like, how is this happening when these are students? I'm not understanding. I could just see a lot of them were putting their schoolwork completely to the side to be able to do this. And how I know is because I was almost doing the same thing. I didn't really get deep into this group, but they would have studies right during the time where I would typically use that time to either catch up on schoolwork or study for my next class. And as I continued to be involved with this group, I found myself neglecting that type of stuff. And I don't think that's what God would want, because He would want us to be a good steward over what our current responsibilities are. He wouldn't necessarily say, oh, just neglect all your responsibilities as a student. He's a God that understands we have real things to tend to. That's not saying that we're going to put those things before Him, but there is a certain point where it gets a little over the top, and then you're not being responsible.
Yeah. And it's one thing to be called by God to focus on ministry, but it's the fact that it's people that are making the students feel like their calling and their purpose is to be in ministry alone. they didn't even give the students a chance to actually, pray to God to hear what it is that He wants them to do and to give them their purpose directly from Him. Like, it's just these people who are telling these students who happen to be believers that this is your calling, this is what you're supposed to do. And that's not healthy, because I remember, I think you were even asking some students that we were getting to know, like, so what do you see yourself doing? Like, what do you want to do once you graduate college? And every single one of their answers was ministry.
And this is what I meant by it just wasn't normal, because like we have to understand that we can be witnesses in any profession. You don't have to go into full-blown ministry to be a witness for Christ. Like, Jesus himself wasn't even in the church like that. He was out in the marketplace spreading the good news. So it's just like the way they were like pretty much grooming these young people to believe, there's only one right way. You can't, if you have a dream to be a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, anything else, that's not God's will for you. You have to be part of our church and do ministry. Otherwise, you're not actually a disciple.
Like, they were pretty much making clones of students. Like, every single student had to do the exact same thing. And I'm like, yeah, this is definitely not God.
Like, during that time, like she said earlier, it was during that time where we were still at our old church. And so we were going through a lot at the same time while being in this weird group on campus. And we were just really desperate of trying to find a way out of our old church. And so we were desperate enough to give this group a try. And one Sunday they invited us to a church service. It was on campus, and it was fine, but it still felt very, very off. And I remember there was a couple that was part of the service that one of the leaders highlighted, and they were just emphasizing how dedicated that couple was, because they really dropped their entire lives back in whatever city or town they left to come here, and how the husband left his very, very high paying job to just completely sacrifice it all and come join this ministry. And they were just giving him all these accolades. And I'm like, I completely understand, like, ministry is a sacrifice. Like, when you're actually called, there will be sacrifices. But I'm also not quite sure if it was God that told them to do that, or it was y'all that forced them to completely drop everything for y'all. And so I could really discern that in that moment. I'm like, y'all are trying to play God in these people's lives, and are literally putting people's lives on the line.
And it was super weird, because we found out, like, a lot of people who were in relationships in this group, it was literally the leaders of this group that put them together, like, pretty much arranged them to be in relationships with each other, and then they married them off. I'm like, wait a minute, so y'all are dictating every single part of people's lives? I'm like, yeah, this is some really, really weird stuff right here.
Yeah, so I was just not really having it after a little while. And so I just remember one specific day I was going to campus to go to class, and I was like really getting sick of their Bible studies because it just felt so scripted. I'm like, I just don't feel the Holy Ghost in this thing. And I was getting real fed up. And that day specifically, I was the only one who went up to campus because she fell under the weather that day. And so she stayed home. And I knew I was scheduled to meet with this group to do Bible study again. And I was really praying to God. I said, God, if this is not of you, if this is not for me, please make it clear, because I'm not trying to stay in stuff that's not you. Went through enough already. I'm not trying to go through another one. So I remember I prayed that, And the thing about me, I'm always somebody who always gives the benefit of the doubt. So before just completely dropping them, I'm just like, you know what, maybe I'm just overthinking. It's probably not that serious, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, well, if this is not your will, you're gonna make it clear. But let me make my way to where our usual meetup spot is so I can do this Bible study. So I was making my way and I was walking through the campus's food court. And the building specifically is called the Union. And so with the Union, there's like an upper level and a lower level. And so I was walking through the upper level past the food court. And I was going towards the stairs to make my way downstairs to where we usually met up. And I had never seen this before, but the stairs were literally blocked off with garage doors. I'm like, since when we got garage doors in this thing? I had no idea that they even could do that. I'm like, that's interesting. That's quite a way to block my my path towards them, isn't it? And so I was like, is this your sign, God? But you know me, I always need multiple signs before I'm just like, because I want to make sure it's not just me. So I was like, okay, maybe I just got to take a different route. So I went and took a different route and had to go a longer way to get downstairs. And when I got downstairs, as I was walking towards where we usually met, there were multiple gates that were blocking my way to actually get there. Like I couldn't get around the gate unless I went all the way outside the campus, went a whole circle, and then I would be able to come in through a different entrance. I'm like, that's interesting. That's very interesting. But I'm like, okay, that must be another sign, but let me just try and give this Bible study a go. And I already had a feeling that I knew what this study was about to be about. So typically all the other Bible studies we did, I took my own notes because I like to be able to actually study it for myself. But when I came to this specific Bible study, these people told me, yeah, this time we're going to do a little different today. We just want you to sit and kind of really digest what we're about to teach you. So don't worry about taking notes. Like just put your paper down, put your pen down, just sit right there. I'm like, what the? I said, what type of stuff y'all about to do to me? And they were like, yeah, we actually already wrote your notes. This is their actual notes too that they gave me. And I'm like, that's interesting. And at the very top of these notes is the title of this study is called The Coming of the Kingdom. And I already knew where this was going. So on the top of the notes, they asked me 4 initial questions before they got into the study. Number 1, what is the kingdom? And then I gave them my answer. Number 2, when did it come? Number 3, is it important to go to church? Right then and there, I was like, I'm seeing where this is going. And then number 4, is it important where you go to church? I'm like, I see y'all trying to do your little recruitment right here, ain't y'all? Because I checked out y'all church one time, but I guess that wasn't enough for y'all. Like, I think in your guys' eyes, according to this study, I'm not actually part of the kingdom unless I'm part of y'all church. And so we went through a whole study. And they were really going through all type of stuff that I didn't know where the correlation was. And that's the thing that really had me off about this group was the way they did Bible study, because it was like all done in a way that there was barely any type of context. They would jump from book to book to book to book to book and then try to connect it all. And they did it in a way that you couldn't really sit and digest. They just dumped a whole bunch of chapters on your head, and then they just made a conclusion, and you were just supposed to
you were supposed to just pretty much believe what they said was right, and you didn't have time to actually go back and search to make sure that what they were saying is accurate.
Yeah. And so they concluded this study by saying the church is the kingdom. And they said don't know if y'all can see this, but they were saying that it requires being devoted, and they equated being devoted to being addicted. And you know, I was sitting there, I was like, that's an interesting way to, that's an interesting synonym to devotion. Like, I ain't never heard of devotion being addiction, you know, because God is a God that delivers us from bondage, and addiction sounds like bondage. And what they were saying was the church needs to be devoted to doctrine, fellowship, and breaking bread and prayer. Basically, what they were trying to say is, in order for you to actually be part of the kingdom, you got to be addicted to always being around other believers and in fellowship. Which, on the outside, that sounds good, but it was what they were trying to lead you into. Basically, what they were trying to say is, you got to be addicted to us. Like, you got to be fully committed to our group, to the point where if there's anybody outside of this group that kind of pulls you away and takes you from being fully devoted to us, you need to cut them off.
Basically, you're supposed to build your life around them, and you can't leave them. And that's exactly what a cult is.
Yeah. So I was like, wow. You know, I'm about to go to class. I left that Bible study, and I knew they were going to reach out to my sister. I just knew they were going to try to give her this exact study. So before they could, I quickly called her. I'm like, I know you're not feeling good. You're kind of under the weather, but I'm going to need you to hop on, because what they typically do, if you're not in person, they'll send you a Zoom. I said, if they ask you to do this Bible study with them, just do it real quick and just let me know if you kind of sense the same thing I sense, because I want to make sure I'm not tripping. Like, I want a second pair. I need a second witness. So let me know what your thoughts were after you're done.
So I was sick that day, but you know, they don't really care if you're sick or not. You still got to do Bible study because you're part of their group. So they texted me and said, hey, sorry to hear that you're under the weather, but are you free to do a Bible study? I was really wanting to tell them, hey, I'm not really feeling too good right now. I'm trying to like lay down and take care of myself, but you know, I'll just take this for the team so then I can see what this is about. So I said, sure, just go ahead and send that Zoom link and I'll do the study with you. So they did the exact same thing with everything she said about the coming of the kingdom and how the church is the kingdom and we have to be addicted and everything. And I was like, wow. Because obviously she didn't tell me anything that took place during the study. So I was just sitting like, wow. But what really was a blaring, clear sign that I should not be in this group was as they were explaining how we need to be devoted and addicted to being in this group and to each other and church and everything. They said, yeah, some people call us a cult because of how devoted we are to each other and to God. I'm like, wow, y'all just gave it away. Like, you just told me the answer of whether or not I should stay. And I'm gonna go because I don't want to be part of a cult. I just escaped one. Yeah, I just escaped one. No more. So I was like, wow, this is very scary. So in my head, I was like, okay, God, thank you for giving me a clear sign whether or not I should stay in this, because you know I always like to stay longer than I'm supposed to. And God was like, let me just make them tell you what this really is. And I'm like, okay, I got you. And so the leader of the Bible study was wrapping it up and just closing the study. And she asked me, do I want to pray? And I'm like, sure, why not? And I was getting ready to pray. And as I was praying, my throat started to close up and started getting really dry. And it wasn't because I was sick. Like, it was literally out of nowhere. And I was like, wow, this is something really demonic, because something is like actually attacking my throat where I can't pray.
It's like constricting it.
I'm like, yeah. God is just showing me that this is very demonic right here, and I got to get out now. So I was like struggling to pray, and I could barely formulate my words. And then the leader was just like, "Okay, thank you for praying. Yeah, just let me know what you think about our study and whether or not you want to, join the ICC." I'm like, "Okay, yeah." And I just ended the call. I'm like, "Oh my head was just spinning." I'm like, I can't believe groups like this exist.
So yeah, after that, we were just like, we just had to let them know, like, appreciate the time that we did have with y'all, but I think our time is done, and we're just gonna be done. So we cut it off after that. But the thing about us is, because we've gone through very horrific experiences with cults, encountering another one, and then also seeing young people sucked into this, we knew that God did not deliver us for ourselves. And we did develop like pretty good relationships with some of the young girls in this group. So we're like, oh, heck, I need to go get y'all out of there, because you guys clearly don't know what you're a part of, and they're just preying on y'all, and I don't like that. So I'm about to come get y'all out. There was one girl that we specifically got real close with, and we just wanted to meet with her over a lunch. And we were intentional about having this lunch off campus because, I'm not trying to get monitored by the ringleaders. You know what I'm saying? Because they do that stuff. Like, they literally will pop up out of nowhere. And I don't have time for that. So I was like, yeah, we're going to go off campus. So we went off campus. And we sat with her that during that lunchtime, and we were just really kind of expressing our heart to her for why we left. So it wasn't us trying to convince her. It was just, we know that she would have questions for why we were not part of this group anymore. So we wanted to be fully transparent. Like, after a lot of prayer and a lot of the signs that we got, we just do not believe in what they're trying to do. Because number one, God doesn't instill fear in us. And from what we can witness from a lot of the young people that's part of this group, a lot of them walk with a lot of fear. Because anytime we would get around these young people, they would always talk about, oh, I just don't know. Like, I feel like I'm just failing God, and I'm not making enough disciples, and God is disappointed in me. I'm like, what? Who is telling y'all this? I'm like, why do y'all feel so condemned? Yeah, I'm not good enough. I'm like, that's not God. And if them ringleaders are telling y'all that, you need to stop. And specifically with this girl, like, that's all she would ever talk about is how she feels like she's not making enough disciples. And I'm like, yeah, we're supposed to witness, but
In a natural way.
if the posture behind it is, oh, because there's someone that's going to punish you for it, God would rather not you. He doesn't want you to evangelize that way. You understand? Like, he wants you to evangelize from a place of true, pure love and with joy, not fear. And so we were just really discussing this with her, and she was like, she just came from another church, and she had joined this group just being desperate for another community. She was just coming out about how whenever she would bring up anything to leadership, they never really
took accountability. And she would also express how whenever she recognized red flags and wanted to bring it up to the leaders, she would immediately be overcome with fear, and everything she wanted to tell them would completely slip her mind, and she would feel crazy for even bringing up any issues she had. And we knew exactly how she felt, because that's how we felt when we were in the cult we were in 2020. Because whenever we wanted to express a concern we had with the leader, he would gaslight us and make us feel crazy for bringing anything up. And so what she was experiencing was gaslighting, and she felt like she didn't have the right to bring anything up or to address anything. And we wanted to assure her, like, that's one of the signs of being in a cult, is when the leaders control you to a point where you feel like you're the one wrong and they're never wrong.
Yeah. And she had also admitted, like, before actually joining the group, she had prayed about it, and she did her own research, and she saw plenty of people said that it was a cult. But the thing was, when she found that out, the group, I guess, was so used to people coming out about them being a cult that now they were they already had like an automatic response to, an automatic answer to those type of comments. So they were prepared for when people would point that out. And they would say, oh yeah, a lot of people will call us that, but that's just because we're the church and we just get persecuted because we follow Christ. I'm like, the devil's a lie.
Because that's just spiritual manipulation.
It is. And that's literally what the cult we went through personally. That's exactly what that leader had said to us. Oh, because he's a follower of Jesus, he's of course gonna get persecuted. Like, no, that just don't stop trying to be spiritual about it. You're just a cult.
And you don't want to take accountability.
And then another thing that she shared with us was this group also baptized her. But she said that 2 weeks directly following her baptism, she was depressed like never before. And it's like, I understand that as people, we always are going to go through trials because the enemy is always trying to take us out. But something like a baptism should bring joy, like joy, the joy of the Lord, because you just dedicated yourself to God. You felt darkness. And the thing was, they baptized her in a lake. And she said when she got up out of the water, there were dead fish lying all around her. I don't know how much clearer God can get when the fruit of their baptism is a whole lot of dead things around you.
Like, they call themselves Life Church on campus, but clearly y'all are dead.
I was like, that just really rocked me right there. I was like, ooh, baby, you gotta get out because they done initiated you into some stuff.
For real.
they done initiated you into some stuff, and you gotta get out. And so after she shared that, I'm like, oh yeah, girl, you gotta go. And so we were just praying really hard. We were like, God, make a way out for her, make a way of escape for her, all of that. And we just really believed that after that meeting with her and us like kind of opening her eyes again, she would make a run for it. But lo and behold, she shared what we shared with her to one of the leaders without letting us know. And it's like, I thought this was confidential.
And even during the whole time we were meeting with her privately, she kept expressing how she felt guilty for meeting with us because she didn't tell the leader that she's meeting with us. I'm like, I'm sorry, is she your mom? Like, I'm sorry, you had to ask permission from the ringleader if you can go talk to some people?
Like, girl, are you not grown? Like, what type of control do they, like, yeah, I was like, yeah, that's straight. They really done groomed you right there, because if you feel like you can't talk to people outside of your cult, how do you evangelize if you only can talk to people that's actually initiating your stuff? She wasn't the only one that we were trying to because we genuinely cared for the girls in this group. We did not want to see them continue being manipulated.
And so we reached out to a couple other girls that we were in contact with, and we tried to have that same one-on-one meeting with them, but we would get the same negative response from meeting with them. Like, they would say, I heard you did the same thing with this person, and I don't like you manipulating me. I'm like, where am I manipulating? I'm trying to know how you're doing, just check in with you, because what you're in is not healthy.
It's not. She has a screenshot of one of the messages she received after just trying to meet up with this person.
So this specific individual was one of the leaders of the group, and I guess I should have known better than to, try to check in with her, because I was just asking, will you be on campus tomorrow? Because I'd love to check in and catch up with you, because after we stopped doing Bible studies with them, we didn't really see them. So I just wanted to check in on an individual level. And then this person said, I'd love to get together, but this is my dilemma. I have lots of people who want to study the Bible and people in the church who want help for their lives and scriptural guidance. Last time we got together, you did not seem open to your need to enter God's kingdom, and instead you persecuted the church. Are you in a different place, or is this still your heart? What the? I was like, yo, I'm just asking, can I just meet with you and just check in at a human level. It's not even about Bible study. I didn't ask for Bible study, ma'am.
Ma'am.
I said I just want to see how you're doing because we haven't talked in a minute. And the fact that you start attacking me because I'm not part of y'all cult and I'm not doing Bible study with you anymore, and I apparently persecuted y'all church because made other people aware that a lot of things are not godly in this. I'm like, yeah. At that point, I just couldn't answer, so I just left it at that.
And then another individual that she reached out to like genuinely check in on her because she knew, like we knew that she was going through family situations and health concerns in her family, and we were genuinely just trying to check in on her on a personal level because we knew that that group did not care one bit for anything that anybody was going through. If like literally if you express you needed prayer like for your family or anything like that, they would pretty much say, oh, there must be an open door of sin for why you're going through that.
Y'all are sick.
She had reached out to this specific individual just to see how she and her family were doing and wanted to catch up. And she said, I know you are no longer studying the Bible, but you are more than welcome to come to other events too.
Honey, I'm not sure where you got the conclusion that I stopped studying the Bible just because I'm not studying the Bible with you. You know, there's such a thing as having a personal relationship with God, and it doesn't require me to be in this group.
And that's how you know you're in a cult, is if they make you feel like you left God because you left them. Oh, I understand. Y'all were supposed to be my God. And I'm going to take God at his word when he says, you shall have no other gods. If that's not full-blown idolatry, I don't know what is. And I'm like, yeah. Y'all just gonna have to miss me with that.
So that was our story about how we almost got sucked into another cult when we came back to college. And we share it to show you all like the different signs of cult activity so you guys can recognize if an organization is a cult and be able to protect yourself from getting involved in these organizations. So the first sign that an organization, specifically a Christian organization or religious organization, is a cult is if they're very controlling. Like if you're not 100% focused on them, they're gonna make you feel like you're the worst person because you're not giving everything up for them. So they're gonna expect you to completely drop everything and let go of all your priorities for them.
The second one would be if they're really hyper focused on you recruiting others. So in this context, they were so much focused on other young people making disciples. So they're very hungry for increasing their numbers. Real evangelism isn't going to be hyper focused on a numbers game. It's about actually saving people's souls. You're not going to be concerned. You're gonna rejoice even if it's one person. So if it's a group that's over pressuring you to, like, it doesn't even have to be a religious organization. Any organization that's saying, oh yeah, recruit more, share this, share that, get more people to join us. Like, yes, it's a good thing. Like with anything, you want it to grow. But if there's like an unnatural obsession with wanting to grow, let's put a check in that.
Another sign that it's a cult is if after you leave this organization or group, everybody stops talking to you. Like they act like you no longer exist. Once you break away from this group, they're pretty much gonna overlook you and act like you were never there and they never knew you.
That's definitely not God. Yeah. Because how did we just go from studying the Bible together to now you just nobody can talk to me because I'm not part of your organization? That's demonic.
Again, it does not have to be a religious organization for this to be a cult. It could be literally like a program that you're in, a job that you're in.
And then the final thing that we want to highlight is if they make you feel like the worst thing in the world for leaving them. In this specific context, if they, like we said earlier, they make you feel like you left God because you left them. Let's just remember, nobody's your God beside God.
Yeah.
So they can get off their pedestal. So some ways to actually protect yourself from these type of cult-like organizations is, number one, when people are trying to like build a relationship with you, make sure they're not preying on your vulnerability. Like if they're coming to you because they see you're lonely or need a community, just make sure their desire to establish a relationship with you is genuine.
Another really weird thing that they did in this group was their way of getting to know you was to do a story map. And I don't have any issues with story maps themselves, but if you're gonna get to know me like in a genuine or natural way, story mapping is not really the way to do it. So the way that they did this was they would have you come by yourself, and then they would have like a couple other people who are already in the ICC with them, and they would pretty much ask you to give them their life story from how you grew up all the way to now, to see like your progression of how you came to God and your faith walk and everything like that. I don't have a problem with sharing my story and my life story, but what exactly is this for? Because they literally would sit down and write detailed notes about everything that you share, and they ask you like different pain points in your life and different traumas, and get you in a really vulnerable state where you feel like super exposed to them, to people who you don't barely know. And after they finish asking you all those questions, they keep the story map. I'm like, excuse me, what are you guys gonna do with the story map? Why are you guys keeping this? Like, that just feels like some witchcraft right there.
It is, because are you just gonna study me and then just really, really get to know where my weak spots are or whatever, so that y'all can take advantage of that? Like, that's not natural. You want to get to know me, get to know me over time. You don't just condense my entire life on one little sheet of paper and then claim you know me and can dictate where the rest of my life is supposed to go.
Make sure like you really build up your self-worth as you search for community, because anytime you have low self-esteem, there will be people that will present themselves to you that make you feel like, oh, this is an answered prayer, or that they're giving you exactly what you've always wanted. And we have to be careful about that and really be sober-minded when we try to look for community, so that we don't end up in cult-like environments.
The devil surely roams around like a roaring lion, seeking who he can devour. And he was looking for us.
And the thing about cults is they'll play on your vulnerability and your weaknesses. So if they know you're in need of something, they're going to come to you and say, we have what you need. Come join us.
Another way to protect yourself, and I can never emphasize it enough, I've said it over and over again in plenty other videos, do not ignore the Holy Ghost. The Holy Spirit is your greatest advocate. We cannot stress that enough. Stop gaslighting yourself. Like, if you feel off, you feel off for a reason.
Yeah. And if you're not sure you have the Holy Spirit, pray to God and ask Him to give you the Holy Spirit, because He will always guide you and direct you in the right ways to go. So just continue to build that intimate time with God, and you'll begin to learn how God speaks to you, and He'll make you feel uneasy if something's not from Him.
And as always, if people are coming to you as Christians, you gotta test the spirit. It does not matter. They can look beautiful. They can look like they serve people. They can look like they love people, but that doesn't matter. It's the spirit that matters. Like, they can do all these great things, but if if they don't got the right spirit, it's just a no. Like, there's nothing around that. Like, if it's not God's spirit that's operating in them, it's not God.
And for those of you who've been following us for a little while and watch our other videos, God will always reveal to you who these people really are, whether it be through dreams or through warning from people. So don't worry. If it's not from God, God will make sure you know that.
Yeah. And it's just up to you to receive the revelation, because sometimes God can show us things and then we just kind of still keep going with it. And He says, so I'm here to be your advocate, but you're not listening to me, so I'm not sure what else to do. It's either you're going to listen to God or you're not.
So we hope that our testimony and our advice is helpful to you all, especially for those who may be returning back to college coming soon, because we know it's August now. And when you go back on campus, there will be a lot of different organizations that will try to recruit you, and we just definitely want to make sure that you all are careful. This also applies to sororities and fraternities too, because
we were almost pulled into one too, because prior to us ever having any type of understanding of the foundations of sororities and fraternities, you know, they were also at that fair with that campus ministry trying to recruit people. And because we were like trying to be intentional about being more involved on campus, we almost joined a sorority, and we actually like went to one of their meetings one time, and I couldn't help but feel real off about it. And after that, we just never went back to it. But God definitely showed us the reason why after the fact, because if you know anything about the foundations of sororities and fraternities, they worship Greek gods, and if we call ourselves Christian, we can't have any other gods in our life.
So we hope this was helpful to you all and that you gained some insight, and that this can help you all navigate different opportunities in your life and different organizations and communities that you desire to join, to just walk with wisdom and make sure that they don't trick you or deceive you into joining them.
Always pray for the gift of discerning of spirits, because that will be your greatest help. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Definitely let us know if you did, and we will see you all next time.